So Ford is doing some really good things right now. I think this was a great move. You guys probably saw the news yesterday. They are simplifying their powertrains. Ram did it for 2025. GM has always been the simpler one. They do not complicate anything with their trucks. Now, I have two articles we're going to read today. The first one is the most important one. The second one's about the Carhartt. You guys have pretty much heard me talk about that. But there's some good things coming to Ford. I think they're ramping up for this refresh, redesign. I don't know what they're going to be doing in the future. I've heard they're skipping the refresh and going straight to a redesign, which would be the 6th gen Ford Super Duty. I found this article on FordAuthority.com. I'm not going to read the entire thing to you. I figured I'd show you some of the information in here, but I'm going to give you a little bit more here. So this says 2027 Ford Super Duty drops 6.8 liter V8, standard output 6.7 liter power stroke. Now, most of you guys know Ford decided to do a complete redesign to the Super Duty back in 2023, which makes this the 5th gen Super Duty. Now, when they did that, they did introduce a 6.8 liter V8. Now, that engine at the time was only available in the XL trim level. You could not get it in an XLT or Lariat until 2025. Now, behind the 6.8 liter was the 10R100, which is basically an overbuilt 10R80. And for 2025, 2026, Ford decided to use the 10R100 behind the 7.3 for the F250s. So unless you got a Tremor package, you always had the 10R100 with the 7.3 and the 3/4 ton Ford Super Duties. Now, in 2023 also, Ford decided to go crazy with their diesel option. They decided to add, for the first time ever, a standard output and high output engine. Now, obviously, that was basically when Ford took the crown. They just yanked it and said, no one's going to touch us. And they were right. No one touched them since then. The article goes on to say that the 2027 Ford Super Duty is in fact ditching the relatively new 6.8 liter V8, making the 7.3 liter V8 Godzilla power plant the standard engine once again. Pause. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going off my bad memory. When they brought out the 7.3, they still had the 6.2 liter V8 Boss gas engine. And I want to say they had it at least up until 2021. Now, they could have killed it for 2022. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. But they also added the 10-speed behind some configurations too. But if you know more about it, be sure to share it down below because it's not really relevant for this video. Now, it does continue to talk about the standard output version of the 6.7 liter power stroke, rated for the 475 horsepower and 1,050 pound-feet of torque. They're phasing this out too. Now, I will admit, I was shocked by this one because the 6.8 is probably going to come back as a hybrid. I'm going to put money on it. They're not necessarily phasing it out, but it might come back with a hybrid powertrain setup, basically. But the standard output power stroke is actually a good option in the market still. I would like to get Ford's perspective on why they're killing that engine, because think about the price point of the high output versus the standard output. It's like, what is it, $2,500? Something like that. It's a big price jump. So despite the 500 horsepower and 1,200 pound-feet of torque, that's amazing. I think if I were looking at certain trim levels, like if I was going for an XLT Lariat, I probably would consider the standard output because I don't notice a big difference between the power. Now, if you're hooked up to a trailer, you might notice a difference for sure, but unloaded, I don't notice a big difference between the two engines. And sometimes the standard output will actually beat the high output in 0 to 60 test. Now, continuing on with the article, to better align with the needs of our customers, we are making the Ford 7.3 V8 our most powerful and popular gas engine, the standard gas engine across our Super Duty lineup. Ford Communications Manager Elizabeth Kraft told Ford Authority in a statement. By making our best-in-class 6.7 high-output power stroke diesel engine standard for 2027, we are prioritizing our most advanced diesel technology and ensuring that Super Duty remains the leader in heavy-duty capability. In addition to these changes, the 2027 Ford Super Duty lineup is also receiving a few additional tweaks. The Tremor off-road package can now be paired with the XL trim with the STX appearance package, giving customers a more affordable way to snag the off-road capable upgrade. And for the first time, the Tremor package is also now available on crew cab long bed pickups for the XLT, Lariat, King Ranch, and Platinum trims, and with a massive 48-gallon fuel tank. That, my friends, is a good move. I'm not sure why the other three, include Chevy and GMC as separate, I don't know why they decide to build off-road HDs as purpose-built trucks. Never made sense to me, especially with Ram and the Power Wagon. The Power Wagon should have always been available in a 1-ton long bed, because most guys who buy these trucks, they either live on farms, they either tow big trailers, and they like the idea of that Power Wagon name. Same thing goes for the GM side of the house with the ZR2 and the AT4X. Not available in a 1-ton. Stupid. And Ford here is bringing out their Tremor package with a 48-gallon fuel tank, and I hope that they continue to make the GVWR, the extra 400 pounds available. That way you have that big payload capacity too. And I hope they don't change the axle rating. They could keep the tire pressure the exact same for the 1-tons, hopefully. Now, most of you guys know that Ford also has what's called a Carhartt package coming out. I did see where they had added that only to the XLT trim. So I'll show you guys some pictures here, but this truck is basically going to just add a few enhancements. Now, this is probably good for those guys like myself who hate the XLT trim for the interior. I hate that work truck gray. I hate it. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And it doesn't make sense for the XLT to have the same interior as the XL. They should just give it the same interior that the Ford F-150s have for the XLT, which looks a lot nicer and works better when you get an STX package, even on like the XL work trucks too. I think they should incorporate that for 2027, and hopefully they do. But if they don't, the Carhartt is for you. So I'll show you these pictures. You'll see like some of the decals, stickers, whatever you want to call them. They also will put in the bed, I'll show it to you here, Carhartt with the spray-in. So spray-in's going to come standard. You're also going to get clearance light standard. And one thing that made me laugh so hard, so these Carhartt trucks are going to have special edition wheels. They're 20 inchers, and they are inspired by a manhole cover near Carhartt flagship store in Detroit, is what it says here. And I guess they're just paying homage to the city that both companies are based in, which, yeah. I guess that's pretty cool. I mean, the wheels, I personally like that style of wheel. I don't know if a lot of people are going to like that wheel, though. That wheel, I mean, Ford, I don't know who it is, but I would love to meet the guy who designs the wheels for Ford trucks. Also, I would like to meet the guy who designed the wheels for GMC trucks, because most guys hate the wheels on both of those trucks. But yeah, thoughts on that 6.8 liter with a electric assistant? Anyone want to take a stab at it with me, thinking that that might be what's coming in the future? I don't understand why Ford would spend the R&D on building this engine only to kill it a few years later. That doesn't make sense to me. So I can only expect that to either show up in the F-150s potentially, or it'll come back to the Super Duty as a hybrid powertrain option, which I personally would like to see. I like the 6.8 liter. I haven't heard of any people having failures with that. I know that early on the 7.3s were having cam lifter failures, but have not heard of those having that problem either. It wouldn't shock me too if Ford does decide to add a little bit more horsepower and torque, especially if GM does come out sooner than later with a redesigned HD truck. It's very possible. But I hope this video was helpful. This was good information. I think this is a really good move on Ford's part. When you have too many engine options, when you have too many configurations, things get really, really complicated. And I think Ford has simplified that. You know, you still have the option to get a 355, a 331. So they're really cutting down on all of these different things, making it easier to buy a Ford truck. And that's why I truly believe guys buy GM trucks, because they're very, very simple. And Ram has done the same thing by killing off the standard output Cummins and just giving you one option for the rear end, even on the dually. So yeah, this is a good move on Ford's part. I was hoping to see a refresh, but I feel like Ford has the right recipe for the Super Duty for the next year or two. And we'll have to wait and see. Once we see the Carhartt, I think it'll kind of get them over the hump for sure for the XLT trim level. And with the long bed Tremor, I can see some guys trading in their standard beds because some guys do like that 48-gallon fuel tank and the extra capability that the long bed gives you. So be sure to drop your comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. See you guys soon.